You find that, let's suppose there's a rally in anywhere, Abeokuta, wherever, in the stadium, or Maya Stadium, and what you get is a full stadium. Most of the time, the people are brought there by buses. They are paid something. They are not necessarily party members. They are not necessarily convinced followers. They get there by 8 o'clock in the morning. The big men arrive at around 1 p.m., by which time the sun had beaten the smoke out of all of them. They're angry, they are hungry, there's no refreshment. There's some 500 they will be given after the event. They are hissing, but they have to sit there because the bus will take them to the various locations. And that's why you find that in these campaigns, when you call, whatever party you call, the people are too perched to respond. And so the big men get on the stage, talk to themselves, because really there's no persuasion there. Now there's no followership. And then you overhear somebody, probably an organizer who had come for, he said, oh, before this political season ends, I'll get at least 5 t-shirts. He'll use it to do his work. That's what is in it for him.
The time has passed for us to say, oh, the reason why this person is talking is because he's affiliated to a particular candidate. There are also sensible Nigerians who may not have declared their interest to voting for any of these candidates publicly, but they, with what they hear from their mouth, you know that this one has got sense. He understands. See, the truth is, whether you like it or not, remove the fact of partisanship or I've chosen my candidate. Ask yourself sincerely where this country is now. If you were to hand over the keys to starting the vehicle of this country to driving it to the next level, will you give it? But you see, you know the truth privately, but you have to publicly stand with your principles based on 1 or 2 sentiments or affiliations. God Almighty is watching. Watch this video of what every Nigerian should do, at least as a prelude to the 2023 general elections. Watch this video and share this video. Very, very, very long video, so I'm going to talk very short so you can see this video. Watch this video and see what every Nigerian should do preparations for the election. If you can do this, you will make the right choice. If every Nigerian can do this, that this man has explained this video, will make the right choice in the presidential elections. Then share this video. Share it so that every other Nigerian will see, will know what to do for the presidential election. I'm out of here.
How does it feel so far to you, this road to 2023?
It feels good. You know, going back to the party primaries, the timing of the primary was the first plus for Nigerians. Usually, the primaries will come a few months before the elections. You have primaries 2-3 months later, there is a president-elect. And so the candidates and the parties never really get a chance to go around convincing anybody in the real sense of political messaging. And so rallies take place in stadia and in big places. People are hired for most of these rallies. They are not really party members strictly, ideologically. And so that way you have a new set of elected people, but not electorates. Because the electorate is somebody who takes a conscious, informed decision to decide that Charles Anagulu is going to this place in my name, and that I can always call him back for it. Now, thanks to Mahmoud and INEC, 8 months after the primaries, that's when the elections will take place. That means you have nearly 1 year to tell Nigerians who you are, what you have to offer, why they should take you seriously. And within that period, even for those who are wearing blinkers, they have some time to actually look at you and begin to see the facts they wouldn't have noticed. Yes, if the time was short, you'll just come in and give us some money and we'll vote for you. Within the longer period on the table, you find people asking themselves, is this man or this woman he's not really giving us money because he loves us. No. And in any case, this is probably our money he took before. And let me think about it. The last time, yes, he gave us money, but we didn't see him for 4 years. So you see, some form of social consciousness begins to develop. People begin to wake up, and that's what's happening now. As you can see, most of the parties are learning to do what they've never been doing, which is campaigning. And let's stretch it a little on the matter of the point I made about the electorate. You find that, let's suppose there's a rally in anywhere, Abeokuta, wherever, in the stadium, or Maya Stadium, and what you get is a full stadium. Most of the time, the people are brought there by buses. They are paid something. They are not necessarily party members. They are not necessarily convinced followers. They get there by 8 o'clock in the morning. The big men arrive at around 1 p.m., by which time the sun had beaten the smoke out of all of them. They're angry, they are hungry, there's no refreshment. There's some 500 they will be given after the event. They are hissing, but they have to sit there because the boss will take them to the various locations. And that's why you find that in these campaigns, when you call, whatever party you call, the people are too perched to respond. And so the big men get on the stage, talk to themselves, because really there's no persuasion there. Now there's no followership. And then you overhear somebody, probably an organizer who had come for, he said, oh, before this political season ends, I'll get at least 5 t-shirts. He'll use it to do his work. That's what is in it for him. So looking at the milieu, looking at the environment, what is happening is that there is developing now greater political consciousness towards demanding responsibility from leadership and elected individuals. And what are the precipitating factors? Insecurity, hunger, absolute proof of irresponsibility on account of those elected, lack of access to anybody that could explain anything. And you see that everything is going downhill. And on top of it, there is what you might call conspicuous consumption by those who should do something about it. And they are facing an elite that cannot be embarrassed when all the roads are bad, when there's insecurity, and they all have private policemen around it. So you find that the people are beginning to realize, look, we matter. I just lost my cousin, why should I? And so putting all of that together, what I see is that there is a growing percentage of Nigerians who would want to tell themselves, and listen, whoever is going to drive this vehicle, whoever is going to hold this steering from 2023, we just have to know where he's driving us to.
That's a very good analysis and a very good way to open the discussion. But you did mention something about the length of time that we have between the primaries and the actual vote. Doesn't that strike you as giving people more? I mean, people are sort of getting a little bored. I mean, on one level, I mean, you can see that the rhetoric is getting harsher because the politicians don't have much more to say. The saber rattling is getting louder, and the vitriol between the parties, their supporters, and so on is getting more vicious. I mean, what message does that send about how heated things are going to be when the election proper arrives in 2023? Because this is all building up to that time.
You know, there's this saying that it's not the size of the fight in a man that matters. No, it's not the size of the man in a fight that matters, but the size of the fight in him. You can make all the noise. One, you can't fast forward the elections. Secondly, if you're telling lies, you're bound to run out of lies. Thirdly, if you're screaming, you lose your voice. And so there's absolutely nothing to worry about in the saber rattling. Keep rattling it. At a point, your hand will pain you. Put it down and find something else to do. Look, when the polity hits up in this form, and you know there's not any likelihood of visible physical violence, people are coming to speak English. Let them speak. They will run out of vocabulary at some point, or if they are telling lies, it will become clear. So I think this is part of the needed, if you like, fermentation and eruption that will lead people to conviction. I've come out, I'm representing a candidate, I'm calling the other person names. If I had only 1 week to do it, I could get away with it, but I have 7 weeks. So at some point, somebody will say, somebody who was even endorsing my insult will say, this man, doesn't he have manners? Wasn't he properly brought up? Can he just go on like this?
Or doesn't he have anything better to say?
His children, wouldn't they be ashamed watching him do this? You see, as far as I'm concerned, what's going on now is part of what you might call the awakening of a new national consciousness. When people are allowed to exhaust their excesses, when people are allowed to put out whatever they think, which would have worked, and which in the past worked in the short term, but which will not work in the long term.
Yeah, that's a good point. You know. So let's get beyond that rhetoric then and that saber rattling. What about the real message, which is the plans and manifestos of the leading parties and how they intend to rescue this country if they win? What is your assessment of their central messages?
As manifestos, these are documents. And as documents which have to do with governance, they are statements of good intention. This is not the first time we are seeing manifestos, and if our historical experience is anything to go by, we have consistent proof, not just indication, of manifestos written by consultants, by the think tanks of various political parties, and which then get published, but which has nothing whatsoever to do with the thinking, disposition, plans, and intentions and aspirations of those in power. So they get into power, begin to quote and unquote run a government without any recourse to what is called the manifesto. So 3 things on the table. Number 1, it is good that the parties have finally all come out with their manifestos. Number 2, it took them a while, which makes us believe that some thinking went into it. Number 3, I've looked through the 3 of them. As they are, each has something it wants to offer and claims to offer. One cannot quarrel with that. But I would personally want to move beyond the document to the reflexes of those who are to deliver this document.
You said 3. Some of them would say 4.
Well, I agree.
And would insist on 4.
And insist and warn you not to contest. So we will now move beyond, because why I don't want to also dwell on the document is that we've had fantastic documents in the past, well written, and then let's go back to 2014. You remember we were told to expect 1 naira to $1. We were told a lot of things, which had those who were saying he paid attention to the state of the economy, they wouldn't have said. Because as at the time of the election, the sitting government was concerned about how to pay salaries as from July. The incoming government was sure everything would be all right, insecurity would disappear, even though it had no plans for it. Now the government took off and people referred to the manifesto, and a few people pointed out, listen, you were the ones who wrote the manifesto. I didn't know anything about it. Now, so let's not discuss manifesto. It's not what we're going to vote for. You have limited literacy, you have a little attention to even the manifesto. So let's look at the candidates. What are the reflexes we are seeing from them which indicate that even if indeed they own the manifestos, they would speak to it in terms of action? How have their campaigns been going? Real Nigerians don't live in stadia, they live in villages. Real Nigerians are not the people you address. They say, okay, sometimes, the way to get to Nigerians is that these documents, you also put them in Igbo, Hausa, and, the 3 major Nigerian languages, print millions of them, and it's going to Nigerians. I run campaigns. So what's the simple logic? What's the level of literacy in English? Among those who are literate in English, how many are reading your manifesto? You're printing the one in Igbo. My uncle will read it, or my cousins in the village, or yours in Ijebode. So these are just means of expending money.
And in any case, there's a certain amount of literacy that's required to read in any of
those languages. Yeah. And in the case of the indigenous languages, you're on your own most of the time. But it then gets recorded as proof of communication effort, whereas in fact what you have is proof of expenditure on communication material. And then you have advertisements. Advertisements, I don't know anybody who has changed his behavior because there's a full page advert. So you find that the parties, the bulk of the expenditure, and this has been the pattern, is on adverts and all of that. So record of expenditure mistaken for communication. Now, coming to the substantive matter of the reflexes I mentioned, all of these candidates, how are they carrying on? How they are carrying on will give us an indication that these are people who are likely to pay attention to promises made in their manifestos. What has been their campaign? So if we look at the 3 front runners, for instance, how many of them are going beyond stadia? That's, you have this in this stadium to people, to power, what I call power centers. Assuming I want to speak to the people in Kano, and I go and talk in the stadium, they will fill it up for me. But assuming I go there, I come to see the emir, right? That's a power center. There's this imam, there's this village head. I'm talking to the people whom the people there respect. And if those people take me seriously, I'm making mileage. But I go to the places where we are used to going in our fraudulent campaign, and I'm not having access. So you then watch the reflexes of the candidates themselves and of those who work for them, who represent them. How is their communication going, both in terms of vocabulary, how many people can understand them, What kind of platform do they use? Is it mostly elite platform? And so if you look at the three candidates, you'll notice that the Labour Party candidate has been going to the kind of what you might call funny places where presidential candidates don't bother to go to.
Yeah, but the NNPP candidate will make the same argument.
Oh, yes.
That he's been going into all the nooks and crannies of the country.
The same argument is valid for him. So that's something a positive. So I'm not isolating any. I'm saying that if you look at the NNPP guy, you look at the man in Labour, and I actually expected that somebody like Shore would also do that, but he might have challenge of logistics. I don't suppose he's as well funded as some other. Now, what point am I making? A president is going to be president of Nigerians, and Nigerians are not in urban areas. Some Nigerians are those who float on the surface, less than 1%. What are they doing that makes you think that, oh, this man or this woman is a kind of person who will understand the issues? We have challenge of education in the north. The candidates have said they will do a lot of things about it. But which of the candidates has a record for intervention in that regard? Look, between us, the general impression is that, no, the fact is that education is not doing very well in the north. But there's then the wrong impression that there's something almost genetic about it. Simple matter. You take me to a Quranic school. I go there. I memorize the Quran, all of it, and recount it flawlessly. That's proof of exceptional intelligence. But you see, you've not capacitated me to play in the economy. So you've not given me a means of livelihood. Now, by giving me that education, which is right on its own, all you need to do is couple it with something else that fits into the modern economy and Western education for survival. The evidence that I'm exceptionally intelligent will also manifest there. What kind of leader is behaving in such a way that things like this would occur to him among those campaigning? So these are some of the things we must look at beyond the document, which I can assure you the party's experience in running even presidential campaigns, my experience is anything to go by. You won't find up to 3% of the drivers of the party who know what's in that.
Well, that's why we've got you here, because we know you've been looking at those candidates. Do you detect a new seriousness and a new honesty on their part this time around, with the dignity and respect of Nigerian people at its core, a new determination to be truly effective in the lives of Nigerians? Or is it more the same old, in other words, promises?
Well, I think it's a combination of both. The new seriousness I'm seeing is, willy-nilly. You see that you just must become serious because people are making new demands. And so you're forced to say things differently, you're forced to...
But that doesn't necessarily tell us that when they get into office, they're going to respect those
Precisely.
things.
That's why we have to now look more closely.
Right.
And then, okay, these candidates are beginning to do ABCD. What's the electoral value of what they're doing? APC candidate went to Chatham House. Other candidates, they're doing all kinds of things. If you put all of that together, what impression do you get? That we are working towards talking to Nigerians, convincing Nigerians? I think not. I think that some of the candidates are watching with consternation the gestures and actions of their co-contestants and trying to see how to measure up with that. And so you see that whereas the efforts are increasing, there's a reluctance, I don't want to use the word willingness, to step forward, because they're not used to saying anything, they're not used to doing anything, they're used to people talking on their behalf. And so, yes, we are having, you can see we are moving the people. I get on a podium, I speak, I'm just talking to myself. That's a new thing they have to learn. And if you ask me, there's enough time to make a slight different modification to the approach they're adopting, because they're still doing the elite thing we do. Take, for instance, I think there was this visit about 4 weeks ago to Bauchi State by the PDP presidential candidate, the campaign DG, and a few other stakeholders. They went to meet with the governor and gave a briefing that yes, they are trying to sort out all the gray areas to ensure success in 2023. A few days later, the man they went to visit came out and said the presidential candidate is on his own. That is after him. That's not even just the issue. But you look at it, you are trying to convince us you want to be president. Now, I'm a man, I want to become the Igwe of my place. And 3 of my wives have been quarreling for the past 6 months, and I'm unable to resolve the quarrel. The children are even hitting at each other. There's commotion in my compound. Would you want me to be the Igwe of the town? That's the challenge the PDP has. That more than 4 months after the election, it's unable to resolve its internal issues, and that the party is not asking itself, what's the electoral value of the people on account of whom we are throwing stones at each other? In their own state, was the electoral value. In the wider Nigerian state, was the electoral value. And so, am I demarketing myself? Am I giving the impression I can't really manage crisis, even though I'm called a conciliator? These are things people are not weighing, and they are hoping that the observers will vote for them. I don't know the kind of logic that is supposed to be. Then you look at, of course, you look at the obedient movement, Peter Obi and his people. Popular, right? But are they warehousing it? If, for instance, you have all these things going on in many places, the people in town A have been doing this, let them meet those in town B, the leaders, that kind of coalition. So they need greater organization. They need also, fortunately, the attempt to suggest that, some were quite vociferous in all of that. The attempt to link it directly with the candidate or the party didn't work. But the truth of the matter is that success in this business is about how you come across ultimately.
Right.
Are you reassuring to the people? Do they find you believable? Then you move to the APC candidate. Of course, I'm talking about the major front runners. Look, there's this thing that, Muslim ticket, it was strong. I think the APC missed an opportunity to make an important point about Bola Tinubu. He was governor for 8 years. He was a Muslim. Nobody knew. His cabinet, do you get it? And he has Muslims right in his own family. So they lost the opportunity to market him in that angle.
Right.
The other challenges, of course, will be in the area of personal identity, issues of who he really is, etc. And worst of all, the fact that he celebrated a 70th birthday not too long ago. And then knowing the age, rumored now, I would say, to have been the age when he was governor. I don't know how he could have been 70 a few years ago, but he's not a few months ago. But it's not, the point is that the elite sent him goodwill messages. So it's also a statement about the kind of country which we are.
Okay, well, that's a very good point. And we've got about a minute or so, a minute and a half, and then we have to go live to the United States. We've got about a minute. Is it your sense then that this election, given all the things that you've said and the assessment that you've made, and we've talked for over 25 minutes, you should
right now?
That. Absolutely. Is it your sense that this election represents a critical junction in the political and democratic history and evolution of this country, and that its success will represent a huge leap forward for the democratic future of Nigeria?
Not a critical junction, the ultimate junction. We miss it now, we miss it permanently. We have a new generation of people, we have cross-generational crisis, we have an economy that's not working, we have insecurity, people can't move around, the elite can't even enjoy their wealth, and in some cases their loot. And the people have woken up to the fact that this cannot go on. The answer is yes. And that's why every effort to lead the people to make informed decisions is what would help. And the parties, you see, we're advancing to the point where people will now collect money and actually still vote against you. So 2023 will make or mar the nation. Yeah, that's my view. It's not only critical, but very fundamental.
Okay.